The X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, rel-mar McConnell Media Company, the X Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. If you'd like to send me an email, xzone at xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, X Zone Radio TV. On the X Zone Broadcast Network, you can visit for all the broadcast information on the X Zone broadcast, on the X Zone Radio Show, as well as the other programming that we have available for you, 724-365 at www.xzbn.net. And for the X Zone TV channel, Channel 21 on Simul TV, simultv.com. My guest this hour is Mark Muncy. He is the creator of Hillview Cemetery, a charity haunted house in Central Florida that was so infamous it was banned by the city of St. Petersburg. An author of horror and science fiction, he has spent more than 3 decades collecting ghostly tales and reports of legendary beasts. Currently, he is finishing his 3rd book for the History Press after the best-selling The Eerie, Florida, and Freaky, Florida. He lives in St. Petersburg, Florida, on the remains of an ancient midden with his wife, Carrie Schultz. Occasionally, he is visited by his daughters when they remember he is still there. I know that feeling well. Joining me now is Mark Muncy. And Mark, welcome back to the X Zone. Great having you with us.
It's good to be back, sir.
Hey, listen, I have to ask you, Hillview Cemetery. It's a haunted house in Central Florida that was so infamous it was banned by the city of St. Petersburg. Why would they do that?
Well, we were kind of a victim of our own success. It was a charity haunt. It was in my backyard, basically. We turned a couple thousand square feet into a huge, sprawling haunted house. Never actually went in my home. It was always just around it, although nobody knew that because we built it, looked like indoors. People loved it. And we had thousands of people every year. So when you have a few thousand people going through your backyard, the city's usually pretty lenient about it since it was for charity. But we got a new mayor and, things changed.
Politics.
Exactly.
Well, are you still doing it? Like a charity's a pretty good reason to do something.
We haven't in a couple years. We've been kind of waiting on the administration to change. We're hopeful. We're hopeful that might happen. But we are looking at other possible locations. So,
where does your interest?
It might rise again.
Well, we hope it will. Where did your interest in the paranormal come from, Mark?
Oh, it goes way back. One of my earliest memories as a child was in a house in Dayton, Ohio, where I grew up. And I remember going up into our attic, which was my play area. Went off my room on the 2nd floor up to the 3rd floor. And when I walked into the attic, there was a dark shape in the middle of the room. And it looked up at me with red eyes. And that is my earliest memory. And because of that, I've always kind of been drawn to the dark and unusual tried to figure out what it was. Still, theories about it to this day. So,
what is your most favorite aspect of the paranormal that seems to draw you closer than any other?
we love ghost stories. I love the stories behind it all. I've been a big fan of ghost stories for forever, but I've got to say more recently, I love the history and legends of cryptids and how they have evolved over the years. And that's, basically what my books have been about. Is they primarily focus on cryptids with a few ghost stories here and there. Because there's such fascinating stories and so many amazing tales.
So tell me, what is the oddest cryptid that you've done research on?
Well, I would say in Freaky Florida, we got to talk about a character. We were researching skunk apes in the first book.
Yeah.
Which is Florida's Sasquatch. Poorly named because he smells bad. But, Florida loves to name things. That's just what they do. And there's one in particular. We got a sea monster. He's pink, so we call him Pinky. Nothing really creative here in Florida. But there's this one in just south of Jacksonville that goes back to the 1800s. And it's this kind of goofy-looking Sasquatch. He's kind of got like a pot belly. He pants a lot. His tongue's always sticking out. He's about 9 or 10 feet tall. And he carries a lantern with him. And he has he was in the town of Barden, and he has the unfortunate name of the Barden Booger, which, So we researched him, and we've got, sightings, like I said, going back hundreds of years. There was a flap in the 70s around In Search of Time, when Bigfoot was huge.
Right.
They had a Barden Booger festival. They had the Barden Booger Boogie, a song that came out about him. You love all that stuff, but we've learned a lot about him. He's a kind of a cool skunk ape, but I'd say the most oddest cryptid that we didn't even realize was something we were going to be able to research was a story out of the 1920s, 1930s. There was a hurricane in South Florida near Punta Gorda, and they had the phenomena we had a year or so ago with Irma. When all the water washed out of Tampa Bay, all the water washed away from the shore, and these people were starving because of the Great Depression. So families ran out and started grabbing crabs and food, for a lifetime here.
Sure.
And this one family sees a pirate chest. So they rush out to this pirate chest thinking, oh, it's gold. We're going to save our family. And then the water comes rushing back. And they get inside the chest, and it's full of cannonballs.
Oh.
Useless to them, and now they're stuck. But basically, they wind up getting saved by a giant turtle, and they're riding on the back of what they thought was an upside down boat with a tree growing out of it, and it's a turtle. And now it's a weird story. It's kind of folklorish, very 30s. But in 1960s, a Navy diver in the same area spots a 60-foot turtle, reports it, and has it sketched by a Navy sketch artist.
A 60-foot turtle.
60-foot turtle.
Wow.
So that's a couple times this thing's been seen in that same area, about 30 years apart. Turtles live a long time. They get bigger.
They do. My wife and I have a home in Maui, and the turtles there are quite big, but 60 foot, my lord.
And this is a decorated naval officer willing to put his career on the line.
I'll take his word.
Talk about this.
Yeah. How haunted or how weird is Florida? No, I don't mean the people. I've got a lot of good friends in Florida. I mean these.
I would say we've done this. We're coming up on our third book now. And our third book is all ghost stories. It's they just announced it officially today.
Oh, congratulations!
Which is why we're here.
Yeah.
It's called Creepy Florida. Hey, it fits our theme.
Yeah.
And this one is all ghost stories. So we've traveled another few thousand miles and never left the state. We've now clocked over 12,000 miles between the three books and never left Florida, from the Panhandle down to the Keys. And every time we stop,
Yeah.
and go to some haunted location, mysterious location, dark history place, everybody's like, "Oh, did you know about this place, right next door? Or did you know about this place over there?" And then suddenly we're like, "Oh gosh, now we got more to research and more to do."
Tell me, how about Orlando? Is Orlando haunted? Is Orlando weird? Because we have a condo in Orlando.
Well, a lot of the locals here like to call it our nation's capital because it's, so many people come there.
Yep.
It has a dark history to it. The whole Kissimmee area, the happiest place on earth, has a really dark history to how it got its name. And it's, through the Seminole Wars and the Indian Removal Act, where basically if you homesteaded in an area, you could chase the Indians off your land and claim it. And
we're the nice guys,
Yeah, exactly.
We're
totally.
the nice guys. Yeah. You see, we have to go for a commercial break, and I don't want to disrupt you, but when I was a kid, I could never understand how the cowboys were the good guys when basically cowboys were invaders.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, just a little bit of my own history back there. Mark Muncy is our special guest, X-Zone Nation, and we're talking, as you've heard, about the strange, the weird, the bizarre. And if you'd like to find out more about Mark, what's the best website for people to go to, Mark?
EerieFlorida.com has links to all of our social stuff and the books.
All right, buddy, stand by. We'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. My name's Rob McConnell. Don't go away. Welcome back, everyone. Mark Muncy is our special guest. His website is www.eerieflorida.com. Now, Mark, before we went to the commercial break, I was just asking you how haunted Orlando is, and during the breaks, I was talking to you about the different tourist attractions there, and I was surprised when you told me that there are, some of these attractions are actually haunted.
Oh yeah, it's well known. Disney has a few ghosts. One in particular, they have a ghost in the Pirates of the Caribbean ride that they have to talk to every morning. They have to greet him. He has rules that they have to follow. You have to greet him every morning. You have to say goodbye to him every night. And if you don't treat him right, the ride doesn't work well that day. And all the employees know this. It's just a ritual that they have to go through every day to deal with the ghost at the Pirates of the Caribbean. He even has a door kind of near where the dog is. At the end, there's this one little tech door, and when that door is open, that usually means he's out and about, and that's when they know something's wrong. But there's a recent ghost at the Haunted Mansion. I think a kid was, been spotted there. There's ghostly kids who ride the Spaceship Earth over there a lot. No one really knows their story. We have our books are at a shop in Universal Islands of Adventure called the Shop of Wonders, and it's on the Lost Continent Island. And so we've been recently talking to Universal employees, and they've told us of a few ghost stories. Now, one of the things I know the Harry Potter fans love going to the Harry Potter world. In the Nocturne Alley area, they have a bookshop that's one of Bergen and Bert's, I think, is the occult bookshop. It's like the dark guy, the evil wizard's bookshop. And they actually filled that place with haunted artifacts that they bought to try to just make it authentic. And the problem is they think they've actually brought in some ghosts. They refer to one called the Sulphur Man, who hangs out over by the fake chimney. Now, it's a fake chimney, but you will smell sulfur when this guy's around, and you'll hear just whispers. And that's not part of the attraction. That's actually just something weird that started going on there that employees have been noticing.
Wow. So why do these ghosts? I can understand somebody going to a flea market or an antique auction, buying antiques and artifacts that are haunted, bringing them home without knowing.
Mm.
But why do other ghosts actually remain in places? For example, the ghost of the pirate, or the ghost in the pirate cell. Why do ghosts stick around? Is it that they love the attention?
See, we have a couple theories. Since we were writing Creepy Florida, we went to a lot of parapsychologists. We went to folklorists. We've talked to Indian shamans,
Right.
and we've talked to everybody to get different theories. And we almost like to think that it's kind of like Close Encounters, where there's different levels of ghosts.
Oh, sure.
Different levels of alien encounters. There's different levels of ghosts. And like a level 1 is what they kind of refer to as the stone tape. Those are the ones that are just recordings in the walls. They replay the same incident over and over and over again. Don't really have any rhyme or reason to them. Then there's the next level, which are able to communicate and able to do make noises. And then you've got like poltergeist style that don't seem to make any rhyme or reason but throw stuff around and just kind of playful ghosts. And then you've got kind of the more negative energy things, and and it just goes on and on from there. We like to refer to them not supernatural but preternatural, stuff we don't understand yet, that hopefully someday people can study it and figure it out.
Why do you think that there's not as much hardcore scientific investigations being conducted on ghosts and other aspects of the paranormal? With so many people involved in the industry these days, as well as the increased number of sightings and cases reported to not only paranormal investigators but parapsychologists.
Exactly. That's one of the we were on a recent ghost tour of Ghost Hunt with Memento Mori Paranormal down here. They got us into a famous house down here called the May Stringer House.
Okay.
Which is, people come from all over the world to hunt in this ghost house. Numerous ghosts in there, an infamous one called Mr. Nasty in the attic, and a bunch of other unusual ghosts. And we were able to go on this ghost hunt, and it is the first time for Carrie, my lovely wife and illustrator. It was her first ghost hunt. As much as we've done all these other things, she's never done that. And it was just fascinating. They've got all the equipment. They've got all these things. They've got stuff that's based on even stuff Edison and Graham Bell were working on before they died. They were trying to come up with machines to talk to the dead.
Sure.
And people forget that. They're like, hey, these guys invented this and this and this, and they were working on other things too, because they couldn't understand some of the things they were coming up with. And I think that's kind of where it's still in that field. It's, to this day, we haven't put any money in it, because the minute you say ghosts, UFOs, Bigfoot, anything like that, people go, oh,
Yeah.
I mean, chiropractic medicine for many doctors is still not medicine, but it does help.
It does. Yeah. It truly does. In your opinion, where is the most haunted location in Florida?
I will say the May Stringer House definitely is up there. If not the most haunted house, it's at the top. The Riddle House down in Port St. Lucie gives it a run for its money. That's an infamous house that was a home for a caretaker for a funeral, for a cemetery, and that place has numerous ghosts. But I would say, if any place it's still going on, that they're still investigating the place, is the Dozier School for Boys, that I think we talked about back
yes, we did, yeah.
when I was on last time, back when we were talking about Eerie, Florida. It's that case. I mean, they just found another, while they were tearing parts of it down, they found more possible burial sites for bodies for the children that were there.
Unreal. While you were at the May Stringer House, did you have any encounters with unknown or unseen forces?
They were doing what they called some interesting. They were doing some things. They had a thing called an obulus that plays random words based on fluctuations, and we got one word kept popping up. It was Murphy, and they were trying to figure out anybody named Murphy with the house. And I'm like, they've got a room full of military memorabilia from Florida. And the parapsychologists were trying to figure out the name Murphy. And I'm like, it's Camp Murphy. The Camp Murphy was a famous military installation in Florida. Almost a lot of people who went through basic training down here in Florida went to Camp Murphy for World War II. And that became where we were learning radar. That was like a super secret project there too.
Right.
And so you've got all these military room, memorabilia. Hey, there's a trigger word. So that was interesting to me because they had never put that together. And then when we were up in the attic area with Mr. Nasty, there was an old vaudeville trunk, and I was fascinated by the trunk more than anything else because this old vaudeville trunk was amazing. Mm-hmm. But then when they brought out their thermal camera, I was 90 some degrees. The people with us were all in the 80 degrees because it's Florida and it's hot, and the room itself was like 70s, but the trunk was giving off as much heat as me. It was like 90 some odd degrees just coming from this trunk. No electrics, no nothing. It was a heat source. And how does that happen? Scientifically, I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah. So, with these ghosts, why do they stay there? There are so many questions, mm-hmm. and one of the main ones that I still can't fathom is why they stay there. Because if they're there and they don't like people coming, or why don't they just leave?
And that's what, like I said, with the different levels, we think some are stuck. We do think some are recordings that I don't think they're actually a spirit. Yes. But they're like some sort of emotional energy that just replaying some traumatic event, or even just something common that they did that was just there.
Well, the fact that we are all surrounded by an electromagnetic field that's called the aura, and with all the electromagnetic variances in a house or anywhere else, could it be that the essence or this voice is actually trapped in an electromagnetic field, and this is the reason for it?
I mean, that's what the parapsychologists all believe, and I tend to lean that way myself. Mm-hmm. I think there's just sometimes a little bit of that energy gets stuck and needs to play out something. I'm not a big fan of we're going to help them pass on. I think this is just a piece. This is something else. I think it's a mirror.
All right, stand by, Mark. You and I have to take our break at the bottom of the hour for the news, and Exonation Mark Muncy is our very special guest this hour. And if you'd like to find out more about Mark, visit his website, an interesting website. Be prepared to spend some time there at www.eerieflorida.com. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't forget, you can read the current edition of the X Chronicles newspaper with our compliments at www.xchroniclesnewspaper.com. And to find out all about the other programming we have available for you 24/7, 365 on the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Mark Muncy and I return on the other side of this break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, and for those of you who are watching us on the X Zone TV channel, we are now proud to say we are broadcasting in full 4K and ultra-high, what's it called, Craig? Ultra-high stereo? Okay, there you go. So thank you very much, Exo Nation, for keeping us going for 30 years now. Mark Muncy is our special guest, and his website is eerieflorida.com. That's eerieflorida.com. Mark, over the years, have you seen changes within the way that people go out and actually do investigations? What changes have you seen?
Well, a lot of it's for the paranormal guy, for the ghost hunters, it's the equipment. They keep getting new and new devices that to try to make their jobs easier for detecting magnetic fields and thermal fluctuations. There's even attachments for phones that have infrared cameras on them now and stuff like that, which is pretty amazing. Although it's kind of fun, we're running around with camcorders from the 1990s, just because they tend to, be more, just easy to use at the time, especially if you have power fluctuations, which are common with these things. As for the UFO investigators, it's always interesting to talk to them because they now have access to global cameras, so they can follow, sightings through webcams. And that was something I'd never thought of. It's like, or dashboard cameras.
Yeah.
And then for the skunk ape hunters and the cryptid hunters, they've got, satellite imagery. They've got much more highly detailed maps. GPS alone makes all the difference when you're out in places like the Ocala National Forest or the Green Swamp. There were areas of that were completely inaccessible a few years ago. Now have basically maps to them. I still wouldn't want to go out there, from now till November just because of bugs and heat. But but you can go there a few times a year.
Speaking about UFOs, are there a lot of UFOs sighted in the Florida area?
Quite a few, actually. Miami's had its fair share. The most famous, of course, were Gulf Breeze up in the Panhandle, and that's still going on to this day. I know the famous Ed Waters case got kind of debunked when he moved out of his house, and people found the models in his attic. And then they've done some digital work on his old photos and realized he just did a lot of double exposure stuff, which is kind of sad. But that doesn't. There were hundreds of other sightings, and there's still sightings to this day of weird stuff up there. Now it's Eglin Air Force Base is right there, and the Pensacola Naval Base is right there. So we get a lot of stories about USOs, the things that are unidentified submerged objects that go under the water and then come up and become UFOs. So they're kind of intertwined. And we don't kind of think they're extraterrestrial, because if you were doing an experiment with the Navy and the Air Force, there's two bases right there that could do something like that. So there's a lot of theories about that. But we do get our fair share of UFOs down here.
How about around the Cape Canaveral?
Quite a few, actually. There's many sightings, and that's one of the things that I guess the Navy's new program is supposed to be around launch sites. Especially now that SpaceX and what's the other one, Blue Origin, are starting to do a lot of work in that area. They're more concerned about drones and things trying to spy on this stuff, but they are worried about unidentified objects.
Now, just off the shores of Florida is the infamous Bermuda Triangle. What is your take on the Bermuda Triangle?
Well, there's so many cases. The most infamous, I think, would be Flight 19.
Definitely.
Out of Fort Lauderdale. There are a lot of theories about that where they just got miscommunicated. They didn't have any clocks in their planes, which is very unusual. But the communications log, if you listen to it, it's pretty freaky, and it will mess with you. And then the other plane that went up to find them just blows up. The seaplane that was going to rescue them, just blows up after normal communications. It's quite an unusual story, and so that alone, is crazy. But the question is, where does the Bermuda Triangle end? Most people say it's North Point, Bermuda, and goes across some of Florida, but some people say it extends into the Everglades and the Keys, because a lot of weird stuff happens over there, just not as much. So, is it really a triangle? Is it maybe it's bigger?
Then there's a lot of shipping industry throughout the Florida area. For example, like you were saying, Port Miami. You know, I've gone on cruises quite often out of Port Miami, Port Lauderdale. Do you get reports, or have you done reports about haunted cruises, haunted ships?
We've done a few. There's one in particular that comes out of Tampa that we've been dying to actually look into a little more. We've got a couple employees that have given us some off the record stuff.
Right.
So we're kind of hoping that maybe we can get one to go on the record so we can actually delve into it. We've got, of course, the famous. We got a lot of planes that are haunted down here. We had flight 401. Infamous, the plane that went down, and then the pilot and the co-pilot kept showing up on other planes that were using parts from their plane. And that got made into a movie with Ernest Borgnine many years ago, and that story is one of the first ones where pilots and even the vice president of the company reported sightings of this thing, and it changed rules on FCC, the Florida Aviation Commission, or Federal Aviation Commission, because they were hiding the books. Anytime somebody'd mention it, they would throw away that log and give the plane a new log, and then that made it all illegal to do that because of these ghosts. And they, so that's another unusual phenomenon.
We talked briefly about Cape Canaveral, about UFOs, but any reports of ghosts or apparitions at the Cape?
Of course, yeah. The flight was the launch pad C-34, which was the Apollo 1 complex with the famous fire. It's now a memorial. They did launch Apollo 7 off of it. But it's a memorial now, and it has the memorial for Apollo 1. It also has the memorial for the Challenger and the Columbia. All the famous disasters are there. But if you go there, you can get permission to go there. It's not part of the main tour. You have to ask. And ghost hunters love going there because they have seen some unusual things. It was so famous, the ghost that they saw with an astronaut, climbing into a capsule that wasn't there, that he just disappears as he's climbing into nothing. That became one of the inspirations for a famous Doctor Who episode, The Impossible Astronaut. So that's how famous that story is.
How do we rationalize seeing somebody in a astronaut suit climbing into a capsule and then just disappearing?
Exactly. That was, again, two NASA scientists spotted it and reported it. And, why would you say anything about it if you were risking your job, risking your career, being labeled a lunatic? Yeah. And it was two at the same time. So it's not like one guy hallucinated it. Two people saw it.
A lot of people, when they talk about ghosts, they also talk about ghostly animals or apparitions of animals. Florida, I'm sure you must have a few.
Yeah, we've got quite a collection there. One of my favorites is up in the Panhandle. There's an infamous alligator named Two-Toed Tom.
Two-Toed Tom, okay.
Florida loves to name stuff. But actually, they can't take full credit for him. He was named in Georgia.
Okay.
But he was, this family lived on this farm, and the alligator, was eating all their livestock and stuff. So the family just got tired of it, so they decided to blow him up. They just line the lake with dynamite, and they're just going to blow the heck out of everything. And then they blow it all up. But while they're doing that, they didn't realize Two-Toed Tom was already in the lake behind them, not the lake they thought he was in. And he grabs the daughter of the farmer and drags her away. And that's when the farmer gets, now it's personal. He realizes his land is cursed, so he moves to Florida. And they call him Two-Toed Tom because he lost a toe. Somehow they got a toe off of him. But as he moves to Florida, he sees the tracks of a two-toed alligator near his new farm in Florida. And that's when he swears he sees a ghost of Two-Toed Tom.
Now we've got to take our final break, but now I fully understand, and I'm sure our listeners do, why, your website is called Eerie, Florida, as well as your best-selling book. Mark, stand by. You and I have to take our final break for this segment. And Exonation, Mark Muncy and I will be back on the other side of this break. And for more information about Mark or to get a copy of his books, visit www.eerieflorida.com. I'm Rob McConnell. Mark and I wrap up this hour in the X Zone when we return. Don't go away. Exonation, Mark Muncy is our special guest this hour, www.eerieflorida.com. First of all, Mark, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Always a great pleasure talking to you. Congratulations on your books. And, thanks for letting the world know how creepy Florida really is. Or eerie Florida really is.
Yeah, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, I've got to admit. There was, the great Charlie Carlson back in the day who wrote Weird Florida. Way back, I want to say it's 86 when it first came out. He and I was chatting with him, trying to update it number of years ago. And he had gone on and made a few others that never really quite caught on. But he passed away while we were first starting Eerie, Florida.
Oh, no.
So, we carried on without him. But there's been so many investigators and so many storytellers who've done all this before me. They made the trail, and then it was just, all right, now let's find the new stuff. Let's find the stuff that needs to be updated.
A lot of places where there is haunted activity also have haunted doll houses. And do you have any of those in Florida?
Florida has his most famous resident, or most infamous resident, maybe, down in Key West. We have the wonderful Robert the Haunted Doll. Which many people are familiar with. The inspiration for Chucky, that's coming back to theaters.
Yeah.
He's a haunted doll that was this child toy and of another guy named Robert, and they argued so much that the doll took his name, so he went by his middle name, Eugene. The doll scared away the servants, scared away the people who lived there. Went on its own for a while and still gained even more reputation. Is now in the Fort East Martello Museum, and there are rules when you visit Robert. You have to be nice to Robert. You can't take pictures of Robert without his permission, or bad things will happen.
Wait a second. How do you get permission out of a doll that's haunted to take the picture?
Well, the story goes that you just know. If you try to take a picture without his permission, something usually happens, and then the curse happens. And there's a wall behind him that's digitized now. They used to have it just pinned with letters, but now they digitize it after a few hurricanes have wiped out the letters. Robert's fine. He survives these hurricanes. But the letters are apology letters to Robert saying, "Dear Robert, we're sorry. We took your picture and didn't mean to, and please remove your curse." My favorite was this one guy said, "Dear Sir Robert," I like to call him Sir, "I'm sorry I called your leather face stupid. Leather is actually nice for a face. Please remove your curse. We get the message. Please fix my eye, my Xbox, and my marriage." And I loved you put them in that order. I thought that was kind of appropriate. But
And
that
did
museum
he?
is just amazing.
Did Robert really fix up the eye box, his eye, and his marriage?
I have no idea. That was just the letter that was there.
Hmm.
We do know 2 former presidents wrote Robert, but they just won't tell us who.
Did you go and see the doll?
Oh yeah, we've been several times. Robert's very pleasant. We have a mini Robert that's made by the same
Mm-hmm.
company that made the original Robert. I know there's legends that Robert was made by a voodoo priestess and all that. No, Robert was a toy. It was just an expensive toy. He was the My Buddy doll of his day, and but the same company makes little miniature Roberts
Mm-hmm.
that they make 1,000 a year. And the museum was kind enough to let us have one, and we take him around on our tours. So,
Did you ask permission to get a photo?
oh, always, always. And we tell everybody to do that to Mini Robert too, because we've
Mm-hmm.
had some people who've done some crazy things. They're like, "Oh, I'll take a picture with your little Robert," and then I'm like, "Make sure you ask permission." And this one lady's like, "Ah, it'll be fine." And then her phone, the screen just went, cracked right across the screen, and we all just went, "What?" And then my editor, Elizabeth Abbott, she goes, "I'm out. I'm not staying in the same room with that doll anymore. It has to go to another room."
How did you know Robert was giving you permission to take the photograph?
We
I
actually,
have
if you
to
look
ask.
at
I have to ask.
in our, we always ask,
Yeah.
and what was funny was in our books, the 2 pictures we have of Robert
Mm-hmm.
have special captions that do say permitted, printed with the permission of Robert the doll. We got that from the museum. They told us to do that. And so,
Oh,
hey,
that's
we don't
good.
poke the bear. We follow the rules.
I
So,
don't blame you at all. Um, I heard something about a fake count and his corpse bride from Florida.
it's the Elena de Milios was this wonderful Spanish lady who was very ill
Mm-hmm.
of tuberculosis and down in Key West. And she was being taken care of by this Count von Kassel. He was a German count. This is right after World War II, and he's trying to help her. He's trying to cure her. He's going to use his genius to cure her. Said he was a submarine commander. He's an electrician. He was working as a radiologist in this hospital. The problem is none of that was true. His real name was Karl Tanzler, and he was from Germany, but he was also from Zephyr Hills and had a wife and kids up there. But he had fallen in love with this girl down in Key West that came into the hospital. He had made this whole identity up for himself. And when she died, he offered to the family, he's like, I was in love with her. I'm going to protect her. I will put her in a crypt, and we will keep her forever. And the family was just happy to have somebody doing this. Otherwise, she would have been in a pauper's grave.
Right.
What they didn't realize is he kept the key, and he would visit her. And he installed a phone into her crypt so that he could call her at night. And eventually, he stopped visiting, and the family realized something was up, and they went to visit him. And he's like, "Oh, you're perfectly timed. Elena's over here ready for dinner." And they come in, and he had her covered in perfume and wax. He'd kind of wrapped her up, filled her with wires and stuffing, so that they made it. They had been living as man and wife for 9 years, even though she was dead. And when the police came,
Okay.
they arrested him.
Yeah, of course.
But Key West, being Key West, a wacky town that it is, the statute of limitations was only 7 years, so he got to go free. But they displayed the bride
Mm-hmm.
for another funeral. She became pretty famous. Eventually, poor Carl died way back up in Zephyr Hills, where he had made a duplicate of her with a new death mask that he had carved from the initial one that he had made out of paper mache. And that one is on display in the same museum that houses Robert the Doll down in Key West, Fort East Martello Museum.
That is creepy. That is also very sick.
Yes.
Yeah.
He went on to become a famous writer. He
Mhm.
wrote for Strange Tales and Amazing Fantasy and
Right.
fictions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And all of them involved like love from beyond the grave and stuff like that. I think if women actually went to bat for this guy, saying, "Oh, he loved them and all this." I think if they knew that he had a wife and kids that he'd abandoned, or the fact that he had made it so that he could be man and wife with this corpse, I don't think they would have been on his side as much as they were then.
Well, I guess you didn't have to worry about her going out shopping, spending all his money, or running up the credit cards.
Definitely not.
Oh my gosh! So what are you up to next, Mark? What is your next endeavor?
Well, we've got the third book coming out in September, Creepy Florida, which we're wrapping up now. Carrie's done some amazing illustrations for that one as well. But we've got, and this one has more pictures than any of our others because it's got 90 some odd photos with a color insert, 16-page color insert in this one. So it's a true travel guide to the most haunted places in Florida. And then while we're working on that, we're working on another secret project in the future that I can't say too much about, other than it involves a little further out than Florida. We're going to be traveling a little further this time, and then on top of that, we're doing our convention tour this summer. We're at MegaCon in Orlando, which is basically almost as big as San Diego. It's huge. We'll be at Spooky Empire in the fall, which is like the dark side of Comic-Con. It's all horror and such. And then we hit a lot of other places. EerieFlorida.com's got all of our appearances.
Quickly, I've got about a minute left, Mark. What can you tell me about Judge Stickney?
Judge Stickney, St. Augustine, famous ghost story, Huguenot Cemetery. They dug him up because they were going to move him to Washington State. His family wanted him back up in Washington, D.C., and when they dug him up, these two drunks came by and saw he had gold teeth, so they stole his teeth. They ran and punched out the mouth of the body and stole the teeth. And now his ghost is still seen in Huguenot Cemetery looking for his teeth with his old stovetop pipe. People think they see the ghost of Abraham Lincoln. It's this guy looking for his teeth because he wore the same hat.
Unbelievable. First of all, Mark, I want to thank you once again for coming on the show. Always a great pleasure. Let us know when your new book is available. We'll get you back on. And just keep up the great work and keep us in the loop.
Always, always. So see you on the other side.
Hopefully not for a long time. Oh, you mean the other side? Yeah, gotcha. I thought you meant the other side of the veil, life, death, and everything else. All right, Mark Muncy has been my special guest this hour, www.eerieflorida.com. And after this bit of time we've spent with Mark, I'm going to have to see if my wife is interested in selling our home in Orlando. Somehow, I don't think so, but I'll give it a try. Once again, his website, www.eerieflorida.com. I'll be back on the other side as we continue here in the X Zone with some of our stations and other networks. If not, and you're leaving us, always remember to keep your eyes to the sky and your heart to the light. For the X Zone Radio TV show and the X Zone Broadcast Network, I am Rob McConnell.